She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter.
Rosie the Riveter was an empowerment figure that was created to be used in propagandas. The government hoped that Rosie would encourage women to join the workforce in replacement of the men who were enlisted into World War II. Not only did women take on job responsibilities, but they also joined the armed forces. Today, Rosie is used as a symbol of American feminism and women's economic development. Although the original purpose of the caricature's creation was not to become an image of empowerment, Rosie was used as a feminist icon because of her impact on women during the 1930s through the 1940s.
During the late 1800s and early 1900s, young unmarried women began working in clerical and teaching jobs. However, before women became accepted in job positions, they held traditional roles such as cooking, cleaning, caring for children, and sewing clothing. Men were strictly responsible for working outside of their homes, protecting their families and making sure their families were financially stable. Once World War I began, over 6 million men were enlisted to fight, leaving women to take over their jobs. Many labor unions fought against hiring women in factories because they broke away from their traditional roles. The number of women working in industries increased, but they were still kept out of factories with real importance. As years went on, women's roles developed as they began finding employment in transportation fields, nursing, and ammunition factories. As World War II broke out, over 350,000 women began volunteering and serving in the United States Armed Forces. Between 1940 and 1945, the percentage of women in the United States workforce increased by 10%, but they hardly earned more than 50% of male wages.
On September 1st, 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, forcing France and Britain to declare war on Germany, starting World War II. However, the United States did not enter the war until December 7, 1941. A widespread male enlistment of over 12 million men left gaping holes in the industrial labor force during wartime. The government held propagandas to convince women to enter the job positions traditionally held by men, and many of them had to sacrifice part of their lives to join the war effort. Women were still expected to care for their households and children after joining the workforce. In these propagandas, women of all backgrounds were also being promoted to participate in finding jobs in factories and labor markets. Women knew that these jobs would only be temporary and that the men would eventually return home to reclaim their jobs. The idea of Rosie the Riveter originated in a song written in 1942 by Red Evans and John Jacob Loeb.
Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine.
In 1942, a Pittsburgh artist named J. Howard Miller was inspired by the song and created the first poster of Rosie the Riveter. Miller's image depicted a more feminine woman wearing a red bandana, but he never intended his creation to be a symbol of women empowerment. His original purpose was solely to encourage women to be part of the workforce. The poster of Rosie was then recreated by Norman Rockwell and was published on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post on May 29, 1943. However, Rockwell's image of the icon depicted a strong, masculine woman wearing dirty overalls like she was hard at work. Rosie the Riveter became the most successful recruitment tool in American history, encouraging millions of women to join the workforce. However, most women were recruited in factories that had little responsibility because many people thought they were incapable of higher-level jobs. In an interview with Nathan Patty, he stated that Rosie is someone who is strong, patriotic, working to help support a brother or friend in the military, and an American citizen of great importance.
The use of Rosie the Riveter broke barriers in gender roles because it promoted the idea of women working in positions traditionally held by men. Despite this achievement, however, Rosie only represents a first step in realizing equality in the workforce. On May 15, 1942, the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, also known as the WAAC, was converted to an active duty status in the U.S. Army. George C. Marshall, who was responsible for exponentially increasing the size of the U.S. Army, supported the idea of introducing a women's service branch into the Army. Many men underestimated the work women could accomplish and succeed in. Rosie the Riveter was one of the first female models used on posters in factories. This is because women were not severely needed in the workforce until the outbreak of World War II, due to the many men that were deployed to serve. After the war, many women continued to hold the same job positions as men, but others were forced out of their jobs and returned as home workers. However, the women who continued working earned less than half a man would while doing the same job, and they also received unwanted male attention. In the 1950s, 1/3 of women older than 14 years old worked outside the house, but most of these women were secretaries, bank tellers or clerical workers, sales clerks, private household workers, and teachers.
Rosie the Riveter is still used as a symbol of American feminism. For 3 years, people have honored the women workers of World War II with their own special day, on March 21st. National Rosie the Riveter Day was created by World War II workers Phyllis Gould, a former shipyard welder from California, and May Cryer, a former B-17 bomber riveter from Pennsylvania. Since 2014, Cryer and Gould have been asking government officials to recognize the contribution of the millions of women who held jobs previously held by men. The Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park was created in honor of the women who made up much of the workforce at shipyards, and a Rosie the Riveter memorial was constructed 3 years prior to the park's composition.
All the day long, whether rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the Riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little frail can do more than a male can do. Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine. When they gave her a production knee, she was as proud as a girl could be. There's something true about red, white, and blue about Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie, the Riveter. Rosie, 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 working on assembly line. Bubble day, bubble dee dee, leave it on that day. Rebe boy, rebe boy, rebe. Rosie, 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 the Riveter on the assembly